Pisces, this is urgent. In 12 days, on August 28th, the sky closes a door that has been open for almost 2 full years, a full moon eclipse forming in Pisces, the final chapter of a story the moon and sun have been telling across the Virgo-Pisces axis since September of 2024. So stay with me till the end, and if you're watching this right now, something pulled you to this video, and that is not an accident. Something above chose you for a reason, and by the end of this, you will know exactly why. That is not coincidence. That is the exact thing this video is here to name. On the night of August 28th, the moon will stand full in the sign of Pisces, and for a window of time, the Earth's shadow will slide part-way across its face, a partial eclipse, deep enough that it reads almost as total. It sits nearly opposite the sun, which by then has just crossed into Virgo. Eclipses like this aren't ordinary full moons. An ordinary full moon illuminates. An eclipse interrupts. It briefly cuts the light off entirely, and in that cut, something that's been building underground for a long time finally surfaces where you can actually see it. This particular eclipse isn't standing alone. It's the last in a sequence that started back in September 2024, when a lunar eclipse first landed in Pisces and opened a 2-year conversation between Virgo, the sign of managing, fixing, perfecting, holding things together through sheer effort, and Pisces, the sign of dissolving, feeling, releasing, letting go of the need to hold anything together at all. For 2 years, something in the collective, and very likely something in you personally, has been negotiating between those two impulses. How much do I control? How much do I surrender? How much do I fix? And how much do I simply feel? This eclipse is where that particular negotiation finally lands, at least for this chapter. For most people, that negotiation has played out quietly, almost invisibly in the background of an ordinary life. But for a smaller group, the ones whose inner world has always run louder than their outer one, the ones who feel the temperature of a room before anyone speaks, this kind of eclipse doesn't stay in the background. It reaches directly into the chest, not because the sky is doing something to you, because the sky right now is finally showing you something that was already sitting there, quietly underneath the noise of your ordinary days, waiting for the lights to come up. If you've noticed the past week or two feeling strangely tender, old memories surfacing without warning, a dream that wouldn't leave you alone, a sudden wave of feeling for someone or something you thought you'd already made peace with, that is worth taking seriously. Not because Pisces or the moon or any eclipse controls your life from somewhere out there. It doesn't. It's worth taking seriously because water finds the cracks in anything, and an eclipse in the most porous sign of the zodiac has a way of finding exactly the places in you that were never as sealed as you like to believe. There is a specific kind of person this eclipse speaks to directly. And if you have ever felt like you were born without the skin most people seem to come with, the thing that keeps other people's feelings, other people's pain, other people's dreams from leaking straight into your own, you already know exactly who I mean. Astrologers often trace this back to specific placements: a strong Neptune, a 12th house that isn't empty, a moon or a Venus sitting somewhere in Pisces itself. But you likely didn't need a birth chart to recognize this in yourself. You've probably known it since before you had any language for it at all, since you were a kid standing in a room full of noise, somehow already crying without being entirely sure whose sadness it actually was. I want to walk through 5 of these traits slowly, one at a time, not so you can check boxes and grade yourself, so you can finally see a pattern that is likely gone completely unnamed for most of your life, scattered across 100 small, strange moments you never thought to connect to each other. 1. A lifelong sense that you were never entirely built for the world exactly as it is. Not dramatic alienation, nothing you could point to and say, that's the day it started. Something quieter, a sense since early childhood that ordinary reality is a little thin, a little unconvincing compared to whatever runs underneath it. Many people who carry this frequency describe a childhood spent half elsewhere, staring out of windows during class, building entire inner worlds that felt more real than the classroom itself, feeling homesick for a place they couldn't name and had never actually been to. If you spent your early years quietly convinced that somewhere, somehow, there was a version of life that made more sense than the one you'd been handed, that's worth naming honestly right now. 2. An almost total absence of a boundary between your feelings and everyone else's. You walk into a room and you already know something is wrong before a single word gets said. You cry at a stranger's grief on the news, at a song that isn't even about you, at a movie everyone else in the theater seems to be watching quite calmly. From the outside, people have probably called this too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too easily affected by things that shouldn't affect you this deeply. From the inside, it has likely felt less like a flaw and more like standing in the rain without an umbrella, while everyone around you seems to be standing under one you were simply never handed. If either of those first 2 has already landed somewhere true in you, go ahead and drop the word "here" in the comments right now, before you forget, because I read every single one and it genuinely shapes what gets made next on this channel. 3. Dreams and déjà vu that feel like more than static. Recurring dreamscapes, a house you keep returning to that doesn't exist anywhere in your waking life, a person you've never met in the daylight who shows up again and again at night, a specific repeating symbol that means something you can feel but can't quite translate into words. Many people carrying this frequency describe their dream life as at least as vivid and sometimes considerably more emotionally real than their waking one. 4. A need to make something. Art, music, writing, anything that goes past hobby and into something closer to survival. Not because you're chasing recognition or a career, because the feeling you're carrying has to go somewhere or it starts to curdle inside you. You've likely noticed that the periods of your life when you weren't creating anything at all were also, not coincidentally, the periods when you felt most disconnected from yourself, most flattened, most like you were watching your own life happen from several feet outside your own body. 5. A pattern of giving until there's nothing left and calling it love. A tendency to dissolve your own needs into whoever you're closest to lose track of where you end and they begin, to give and give in a relationship, a friendship, a job, long past the point where it's actually sustainable, because saying no has always felt, somewhere in your body, like a kind of betrayal. This is often the trait that costs the most, and it's also, not coincidentally, the exact one this eclipse tends to press on hardest. If 2 or 3 of these landed cleanly, take a real breath here before we keep going. You don't need every single one of them. But if this is resonating, that's worth acknowledging plainly, rather than explaining away as coincidence. Recognizing this pattern in yourself is one thing. What this eclipse window is actually asking of you is something more active than recognition. A lot of people spend years, sometimes their whole lives, quietly aware of their own permeability without ever being given permission to actually do something with it. This window is offering exactly that permission. But permission from the sky means very little without a matching choice from the person receiving it. So let's talk about what that choice could actually look like this week, not in the abstract. The first movement is releasing the specific habit that's kept you dissolving into everyone but yourself. For most people carrying this frequency, that habit rarely announces itself honestly as fear. It shows up instead as automatic self-erasure, agreeing when you mean no, absorbing a mood that was never yours to carry, staying 20 minutes longer than you had the capacity for because leaving felt selfish. This habit likely formed for a real reason, somewhere earlier in your life, when disappearing your own needs kept you safe or kept you loved. Ask yourself honestly whether that's still true today with the people currently in your life, or whether it's calcified into a reflex that no longer matches who you've actually become. Here's something small enough to finish today. The next time you feel the automatic yes rising in your throat before you've even checked in with what you actually want, pause for 3 full seconds before you answer. Just 3 seconds. Notice what your body is actually saying underneath the reflex. You don't have to change your answer. Just notice that there was a gap there at all, a sliver of space between the feeling and the response, where a real choice could eventually live. The second movement is trusting your dreams and your instant knowings a little more than you usually allow yourself to. Not abandoning discernment, that's not what's being asked. Paying closer attention specifically to the images and instincts that arrive before your rational mind has built a case for or against them. A dream that keeps returning, a sense about a person or direction that has no logical justification but carries an unmistakable weight anyway. Write down whatever you dream over these next 12 days, even the fragments, even if they seem meaningless in the morning light. Eclipse windows tend to hand this particular sign unusually loud material if you're paying attention. Before we go further, if this kind of reading actually resonates with you, this is a good moment to make sure you're subscribed, because we walk through a window like this together on this channel on a regular basis, and I don't want you missing the next one. The third movement, and maybe the most important one, is finally putting the thing you make or the compassion you carry somewhere it can actually be received, rather than keeping it entirely private the way you likely have for years. For some people, that's finally sharing the creative work you've quietly known for a long time you're meant to make. For others, it's choosing one relationship where you stop performing okay and let yourself actually be seen, feelings and all. For others still, it's simply learning to say the sentence, "I have nothing left to give right now," out loud to someone without immediately apologizing for it afterward. There's a specific fear that shows up right at the edge of actually doing any of this, and it deserves to be named directly because so many people stall out exactly here, right at the threshold, close enough to touch the change they say they want. It isn't really about failure in the ordinary sense. It's the fear that if you stop dissolving yourself into everyone around you, if you actually hold a boundary or ask for something or say what you really dreamed last night, the people who loved the version of you that gave endlessly simply won't love this new, less bottomless version quite as much. You already know what this looks like in real life because you've lived it more than once. It's the text you leave unread for 2 hours, drafting and redrafting a simple no until it apologizes for itself 3 separate times before you send it. It's agreeing to take on the extra shift, the extra favor, the extra emotional weight of someone else's bad week, even while your own chest is already tight, because turning it down felt riskier in the moment than just quietly absorbing one more thing. It's staying 20 minutes past when you meant to leave, laughing along, performing fine, because leaving on time felt like it would somehow confirm you were the difficult one all along. That fear is old, older than whatever relationship or project it's currently attached to. It likely traces back to some early moment when holding a boundary cost you something real, a person who left or pulled away or made you feel like too much the one time you actually said no. Maybe it was a parent who went cold the moment you needed something instead of giving it. Maybe it was a friendship that quietly ended the first time you weren't endlessly available. Wherever it started, your body learned the lesson fast and never fully unlearned it. Stay useful, stay agreeable, stay soft around the edges, and you'll stay loved. That fear deserves compassion, not dismissal. It kept you safe once, in a moment when you were smaller and had fewer options than you have now. But you're not the same person you were when it first formed, and you're very likely not surrounded by the same people either. It's worth asking honestly whether that old fear is still protecting you today, or whether it's simply been running on autopilot for years, projected onto every relationship since, regardless of how different the person actually standing in front of you is. Most people don't move through this fear by becoming fearless. That's rare, and it's not really the goal. They move through it by letting the fear sit quietly in the passenger seat while they make the choice anyway, boundary and all. I want to be careful here because recognizing this kind of sensitivity in yourself can quietly tip over into a strange kind of superiority if you're not paying attention, and that would undo the very thing this frequency is meant to cultivate. Genuine Piscean attunement across nearly every tradition that has looked closely at it tends to produce more compassion, not less. More patience with people still finding their own way, not quiet judgment of anyone who hasn't gotten there yet. If recognizing yourself in this mostly makes you feel special rather than responsible, that's worth sitting with honestly rather than brushing past. Here's something you can actually do with this before the eclipse itself arrives on the 28th. Find a quiet moment, ideally near water if you have any access to it at all. A bath, a shower, a lake, even a glass of water held in your hands works. Sit with it for a moment, breathing, letting your body settle. Then say it, out loud or as a whisper, something honest, in your own words. Something like, I've spent my life absorbing what wasn't mine. I'm ready to keep the compassion and release the rest. After you speak it, write down one specific boundary you intend to actually hold in the coming weeks, or one piece of your creative or emotional truth you intend to finally let someone see. Keep that paper somewhere you'll actually see it again. If recognizing yourself in any of this brings up real distress or intensifies something that already felt difficult before you watch this video, please don't treat this as a substitute for support from people equipped to help you directly. This kind of sensitivity can absolutely coexist with very real human struggles that deserve grounded professional support. Reaching out to someone is never in conflict with honoring this part of yourself. If anything, it's an extension of the exact honesty this window is asking of you. If you've made it this far, you've likely spent years carrying this frequency without a clear name for it, quietly performing a more contained version of yourself for a world that wasn't always built to receive what you actually hold underneath it. That's not a small thing to have carried. There's a specific grief worth naming here too, for the years spent believing yourself simply too sensitive, too much, too easily moved without the frame to understand that difference as something else entirely. Grief and recognition aren't opposites. They can sit together, side by side, without canceling each other out. What's asked of you now, across these next 12 days and whatever follows them, is simpler than it sounds and considerably harder to live out. Stop dissolving into everyone else so completely that you lose track of your own shape. Let the compassion stay. Let the boundary arrive alongside it. You don't need every answer today. You simply need to let what's true settle into you without pushing it back underwater. If this found you at exactly the right moment, write it below. I finally see it. Hit like so this can find the next person who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you want to keep walking through moments like this one together. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.